Has NIO got a chance to catch up with Tesla when it comes to FSD and autonomous driving? Hey everyone, welcome back, and if you're new to the channel, also welcome to you. Please hit the like and subscribe button so you stay updated. And in my last video, I have introduced NIO's strategy for autonomous driving. NIO held a tech day in which Ren Xiaoqing, who is responsible for autonomous driving at NIO, has spoken about how NIO wants to bring NOP plus beta, so the most advanced ADAS system by NIO, into cities and urban areas. And in the comments of that video, I got some interesting replies asking me for more details. And as expected, the comment that Tesla has a data advantage against NIO. And in this video, I want to give you my thoughts on that, because I said last time that NIO should be a good stock to get exposure to a Chinese company that has a stake in the race to full autonomy and possibly on a global level. And so of course the question matters whether or not NIO has actually a chance of catching up with Tesla here, because of course what you know is you don't only need the compute power in order to run these simulations, train the algorithms, train the neural nets, and that's of course where NIO has presented their capabilities. But no, you also need the input, obviously, even though now you're not labeling them anymore and you train the computers without any guidance there. And this is where we can say yes, NIO is copying or even like confirming Tesla's approach here and methodology, because they are following that path to say this is the right way of getting away just from purely HD maps, more towards vision only approach that is possibly scalable and working everywhere. But to answer the question whether or not Tesla really has a data advantage here, I think we have to look a little bit more deeper. And for that, I'd like to show you some footage by AI Driver, which I think, by the way, is a fantastic YouTube channel to follow the progress of the Tesla FSD beta program, and they have some really interesting insights here.
Elon sent out a very interesting tweet saying that Hardware 4 vehicles would be lagging behind Hardware 3 for at least another 6 months, which, let's be real, if that's 6 months Elon time, it very well could be. Elon sent out a very interesting tweet saying that Hardware 4 vehicles would be lagging behind Hardware 3 for at least another 6 months, which, let's be real, if that's 6 months Elon time, it very well could be much longer. And if that wasn't worrying enough, it sounds like Tesla won't even be able to use the training data from Hardware 3 because of the differences in cameras.
Does the higher resolution pose a challenge with the data set and everything? How do you manage that?
We do have to retrain in order to use the high resolution, because of the fact that as photons into controls out, that photons are different.
And just a couple days later, full self-driving was released on Hardware 4. Yeah, I didn't expect that either. But it sounds like for now, Tesla's focus is on getting Hardware 3 working well, which is a bummer in the short term if you recently got a Hardware 4 car, but it does make sense because not only are they compute restricted on training the AI right now, but there are also a ton more Hardware 3 cars in the fleet collecting the data that the AI craves. But that does beg the question, if they're not using the data from Hardware 4 cars at all yet, how is it possible that it has the beta? Well, I believe we got a hint of that when Hardware 3 cars got a camera upgrade that made the colors look a lot more true to life and closely resemble Hardware 4's colors. And when did this update come out? Just a couple days after FSD beta was released on Hardware 4. Might be a coincidence, or maybe, just maybe, we're seeing something close to what was used to Frankenstein the Hardware 3 data into running on Hardware 4 cars.
So this video summarizes well that even Elon Musk confirmed that we have to make a difference between Hardware 3 and Hardware 4 when it comes to Tesla cars. So that's what kind of cameras they have when it comes to resolution and so on, and also compute power within the car. And based on that, they have to do different software versions for FSD beta. And that has the result currently that Hardware 3 cars, which is actually the older hardware, is more advanced, has better FSD beta abilities than the latest hardware, which is the Hardware 4, which is, as far as I'm concerned or informed, currently only being produced in Fremont in the United States. And therefore for Tesla there should be two different data sets. One is for all of the older hardware cars and one is for the latest hardware cars. And according to Elon, you cannot simply combine them and using the footage of both different systems in order to train the same algorithms and neural nets here. So this begs the question whether or not Tesla with its latest latest data set is actually still more advanced than NIO here, because according to my calculations, there should be roughly around 150,000 Teslas with the latest hardware 4 version on the road, so mainly in the US, of course, where they've been produced in Fremont. I don't have the exact numbers for that, but given that they were starting to roll out in May and we have around 1/4 of production, and according to these numbers here by Troy, I would say this is likely that they have a full quarter of production, maybe a little bit more by now. So round about 150,000 cars, more or less likely, which might have this hardware in the car right now. And if you think about it, for NIO, we've got a similar situation. We've got the older car platform, the NT 1.0 platform, which has now been successfully transferred to the latest platform. And the latest platform, of course, has the Atom computer, has the better camera system and so on. And so you could also argue, well, NIO also had to start from zero again with the latest hardware, and they can only use the footage of the NT 2.0 platform cars in order to train the algorithm. And according to my calculation, that should stand at around 135,000 cars at the NT 2.0 platform. I might have missed some numbers here, but this is a rough estimation. But if that's more or less accurate, then 135,000 cars compared to 150,000 Tesla cars with hardware 4. This seems to be rather equal, right? And so you could actually assume at this point that NIO actually is not too far behind when it comes to training data for this distinct hardware set, with one data set that is derived from the same hardware with different vehicle models, of course, but having the same camera setup, the same compute hardware and so on. However, I think theoretically Tesla should have still the data advantage. Not only will the even the hardware 4 fleet grow faster than NIO's fleet currently, simply because Tesla is already scaling higher, and even if it's just Fremont for now producing these cars, they have an annual capacity which is larger than what NIO currently is doing. But that's just a slight advantage here, right? But still, we could actually assume that Tesla is further down the road of training the neural nets and algorithms, having their own hardware built with the Dojo computers and so on. That should be more optimized than what NIO has, which just very recently announced these strategies, and we don't really know yet how well they are actually executing on that. But these are just theoretic discussions. We could also assume on top of that that hardware 3 data can still, of course, be used and also somehow be merged with the hardware 4 data at some point if they are successful in kind of merging the software versions at some point, although they have to do some sort of a retraining, as Elon Musk has admitted. But of course, this is only about what's the case right now. In the future, of course, we will see NIO also shifting to sub-brands, which will enable larger volume sales. Therefore, that's a hope that they could start collecting more data as well, similar to Tesla. And of course, there might be also different solutions that are possibly not talking too much about yet, where such data can actually also be simulated at some point or extrapolated, so that they can use a smaller data set and actually expand that artificially in order to use just a basic minimum that's required. Also, of course, what's highly interesting there is that Tesla is maybe not having data that they can access currently in China based on the regulatory issues, but Tesla may as well just build their own subsidiary in China with the training data, and therefore can do it locally, domestically in China, while being compliant and just keeping the data within the country. And on the other hand, NIO mentioned how they want to go global and possibly also being able to use training data from the European markets and future other markets that they're expanding into. So in a sense, we can say this race is on. I wouldn't write off NIO completely when it comes to the so-called data advantage that Tesla possesses here. Sure, they may have some advantages, but on the other hand, NIO might be the only Chinese company now with this also global data set, and it seems with this new approach they are closing up and might have a stake in this race. Plus, if you watched the last video in which I introduced a new strategy by NIO, you will also find a very big distinction between NIO and Tesla here, also when it comes to this supposed data advantage, which is the approach by Tesla is that once you are in the FSD beta program, you're basically part of the testers, and then it works wherever you just go with your car, right? And it's using the data from the entire fleet. For NIO, it will be a little bit different. It will be more selective. So NIO is asking the users to select a couple of specific roads, which will then be validated by those kind of beta testers, right? And this might be rooted in a more safety type of approach that NIO is opting for here. And while they're still accessing the whole data pool of the fleet, which are now discussed how it compares between Tesla, the application seems to be a little bit more narrow, or in the beginning far more narrow, but then expanding to a bigger scope as well, while having a data approach in which the validation has happened before, whereas for Tesla it's a little bit more of a Wild West approach and a more visionary, larger, bigger scale approach, I would say. So both of that might have also their own distinct advantages and disadvantages. Again, time to discuss in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you in my next videos.